You're listening to Strange by Nature, your guide to the strange, weird, unbelievable, and improbable wonders of the natural world.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I am Kirk Mona, and I am joined today by Rachel Ginza and Victoria Thompson. We are all professional naturalists who together have scoured the world for weird and wonderful wonders just to please your mammalian brain's desire for novelty. Isn't that nice? Let's do this.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Hey.
Thank you.
Good to see you guys again.
Good to be here.
Several years ago, I read a really wonderful book called The Making of the Atomic Bomb by Richard Rhodes. It's an excellent read. I actually highly recommend it. It's super engaging, and it really goes into the personalities of the people involved as well as the history of the atomic bomb, and it goes into the discovery of all the processes that were necessary to the creation of the bomb, including nuclear chain reactions and nuclear fission, like the scientists who figured out that those were possible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it also talks about the incredible efforts that scientists put into each stage of the process. So the first step to making the bomb was to create a functioning nuclear reactor to just show that could be done.
Right.
Okay.
And also,
I feel like you're about to go through how to make a nuclear bomb on the podcast.
Well,
we may not be able to export this show to other countries now.
Well, I'm assuming the science is the same no matter where you go.
Yeah, I'm actually going to veer away from bombs and toward reactors.
Okay.
But one of the other reasons to create a reactor in the first stages of the Manhattan Project was to produce plutonium for bombs, because that's how you make it. But
Gotcha, yep.
For what I'm going to talk about, I want to give a quick recap of how a nuclear reactor works.
Okay,
So
go for it.
you need a radioactive material. It's usually uranium. And during natural radioactive decay, the atoms of uranium will split. That's called fission, producing atoms of other elements, heat, and 2 or 3 neutrons. The neutrons can then go on to hit other atoms of uranium, and that causes them to fission or split and release more neutrons. And then if you get enough uranium in one place, this reaction becomes self-sustaining. It's a nuclear chain reaction. And so the process to get this first functioning reactor took about 3 years. It was a huge effort. It was led by the famous physicist Enrico Fermi at the University of Chicago. And the world's first nuclear reactor was built under the viewing stands of the football stadium.
Okay.
Yeah. It was not shielded in any way, just FYI.
Of course not.
It was pretty low powered, but it went critical. It went critical on December 2nd, 1942, and it was called Chicago Pile 1 because it was literally a giant pile of bricks of uranium metal interspersed with bricks of graphite. And this was highly purified graphite, and it acted as a moderator. So what that means is it slows the neutrons down, so that they can fission. Because if they're going too fast, the uranium atoms won't catch the neutrons and fission. They'll just sort of go past.
Okay.
So for the process to work, there has to be this moderator to slow everything down. Modern nuclear reactors generally use water as a moderator, which has the advantage of being, easy to find and also a coolant. So it does double duty.
It does help.
Yeah. And modern nuclear reactors also have they're obviously very complicated systems, and one of the things they have is control rods, which are made of an element that can absorb neutrons without fissioning. So examples are like boron or silver, but there are some others. And these are used to stop the reactor when necessary.
Okay,
so
just random question, and I don't know if you'll know this or not. Why use those elements to they just don't melt? Or why use boron or silver as the rods?
I'm not sure exactly which elements are usually used for control rods in nuclear facilities. I think there are a number of elements that can have that function, but I was just giving boron and silver as a couple of examples because they come up a little later in what I'm going to talk about.
Oh, okay.
I believe, Rachel, a quick, simple answer to your question is that they use elements that are good at catching those free neutrons and not letting them fly around.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what they're there for.
Okay. Cool.
Because most of the time the control rods are sort of hanging up away from the uranium if the reactor's going, but if they want to stop the reactor, they lower the control rods in.
Oh,
and
okay.
then the rods are going to absorb the neutrons and prevent the fission from happening.
Okay. That makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So all of this is sort of background to say that what happens next is pretty surprising. So our story begins with a French physicist named Francis Perrin, who was analyzing some uranium ore from Gabon, which is a country in West Central Africa, for a little geography reminder. And uranium ore naturally contains a mix of two different isotopes, uranium-238 and uranium-235. So U-235 is the stuff that's really important for nuclear reactions. It fissions easily, and it is a small percentage of uranium ore. It's always 0.720%.
Wow.
And yeah, it's not a lot. And in order to be used in modern nuclear reactors or in weapons, the uranium is enriched. You've probably heard the term enriched uranium. And what that means is they go through a process, usually spinning it in centrifuges, to collect more uranium-235 and kind of add it together so that there's enough of it that they can use it. So Dr. Perrin was very surprised to see that the ore from Gabon, instead of 0.720% of U-235, had only 0.717% U-235. That doesn't sound like a lot, but this was actually a very alarming discrepancy because usually the only reason that you would see uranium that was this depleted in U-235 would be if it had already been used in an enrichment process and would be like the leftovers.
You don't want to see that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So like they're like, where did this missing uranium go? We need to find it. Uh-oh.
People don't generally like to discover uranium missing.
No.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a good omen.
No. But as it turns out, they checked everything carefully and they went to the mine that it came from. It's in Oklo, Gabon. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I have no idea. And all of their tests showed that this was natural, completely unmanipulated uranium ore. So the only remaining conclusion was that this mine in Oklo, Gabon had at some point in the distant past been a natural nuclear reactor.
What?
I had a feeling that's where the story was going.
Yeah. In fact, they eventually discovered 16 different sites that had been small reactors within this one mine in Oklo.
That's
so amazing.
Too many.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, and you don't. I first heard about this story years ago, and I remember seeing someone talk about like a naturally occurring nuclear reactor, and you're like,
what?
I'm sorry.
Hold
what?
on.
These are like huge technological marvels that we've had to work to create, and nature just did it on its own?
Exactly.
Like,
it's
so
so
to
weird.
Be fair,
Rachel is still broken over this.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. But also, to be fair, Kirk, is the sun not going through nuclear fission and like a nuclear reaction?
No, it's going through nuclear fusion.
No. Fusion.
So
different.
Yeah.
Got it.
Different.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sorry. That means it is just doing it by itself.
Do we need to sing the song for you, Rachel?
There's a song?
The sun is a mass of incandescent gas, a gigantic nuclear furnace. Where hydrogen
is built into helium
at a temperature of millions of degrees.
Anyways, apparently we need to
so beautiful.
educate. That was not my best singing voice either.
Nor mine.
We need to, we'll send you some links, Rachel.
Sounds good.
I
think I just
that's
got
a They Might Be Giants song, everybody.
But I love They Might Be Giants. They're so good. Anyway,
to get back to our story, it is indeed possible to have a natural nuclear reactor. So this possibility had been put forward. Yeah. It had been put forward by scientists in the 1950s. In particular, there was a 1956 paper by physicist Paul Kuroda. And he laid out the conditions that he believed would be necessary. So in order to form a natural nuclear reactor, there are 4 things that you need. 1, the uranium ore has to be rich in uranium, and it has to have a thickness of at least 2/3 of a meter.
Whoa.
So that yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I mean, I don't know if it is in the context of a mine, but
yeah.
So that's in order that there's occasional natural spontaneous fission in U-238 and I guess in U-235, so that there's enough of the material together that can lead to a self-sustaining fission reaction in the U-235 component.
Okay.
The uranium metal itself must have a high amount of U-235.
Okay.
A moderator must be present, and as a reminder, that's like the water or the graphite that like slows the neutrons down. And there cannot be a lot of material that would absorb neutrons without fissioning, so like silver or boron. So no natural control rods, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
So, these conditions, like, maybe they don't sound all that difficult. I don't know. So why don't we find these natural reactors everywhere? The only evidence that we've ever found of any existing has been in this one mine in Gabon. And those reactors were active about 2 billion with a B years ago. So the key piece here is that the proportion of U-235 that the uranium contains has to be right. So as I mentioned, worldwide, it is currently 0.720%. That has not always been the case.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. When the Earth was formed, about 30% of uranium was U-235 isotope.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's part of how we know how old the Earth is.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's gone steadily down because of radioactive decay.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
So about 2 billion years ago, when these reactors formed in Oklo, it turns out to have been kind of a sweet spot for natural reactor formation. So at that point, U-235 was about 3.6% of uranium, which is high enough to sustain a reaction. But the question is, why hadn't it happened earlier when there was even more U-235? Well,
was there not enough of the other stuff? Or like
Well, they think it was not that the uranium was not concentrated enough.
Oh.
So at the beginning of the Earth's existence, all the uranium atoms were basically like mostly spread out into different places. Yeah. Okay. And to be concentrated, they have to be transported by water into a concentrated place. But uranium is not very soluble in water unless it is oxidized. And until about 2.4 billion years ago, there wasn't a lot of oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. But at that point...
we talked about the Great Oxidation Event in one of our episodes.
The Great Oxidation Event, which we talked about. And suffice to say that the Earth went from an atmosphere with very little oxygen to an atmosphere with a lot of it. And so that allowed the uranium to move with the water and be deposited in greater concentrations in specific places. And this Oklo site was sandstone, so where these deposits were formed. And so also that lets in water. So there was the availability of water as a moderator. And there were no significant amounts of neutron absorbers like boron or silver. Okay. So the conditions in that place were just right. Now, we don't know if there might have been other natural reactors from Earth's past. Possibly they possibly exist and we haven't found them yet, or they've been destroyed by geological forces in the last 2 billion years.
There is a lot of that as well.
Yeah. Who knows? We may find another someday.
I'm gonna hope for no.
Well,
I mean, I guess cool, but also.
But so the reactors lasted. They went for about like a couple hundred thousand years. It said, and
I think it was kind of like on and off over time too.
Yeah. So they were no longer going when they were discovered,
right?
And hadn't been going for a long time. I got a lot of good information for this episode from a Scientific American blog post from July 2011 by Evelyn Mervine and an IAEA website article from August 2018 by Laura Gill. And that is what I have to tell you guys about natural nuclear reactors this week.
Very cool.
Didn't know I had to worry. I mean, I don't have to worry about that. But
you don't have to worry.
You literally don't.
Yeah.
I know. I'm going to think about it for a while, though.
You still seem pretty disturbed, though.
Yeah. Makes me just vaguely uncomfortable.
I can tell. Well,
thanks.
We're going to have a break. And when we come back, Kirk will have something entirely fresh that hopefully won't make you as uncomfortable.
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
All right.
Kirk here with a quick note. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It helps other lovers of the strange find our show. You can also find and follow us on social media. Search for Strange by Nature Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or come visit us at strangebynaturepodcast.com. We'll see you there. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to go out on a limb here. But are either of you Harry Potter fans?
I know Rachel is a really big Harry Potter fan.
I got so excited when you said I have
the face.
My face. It doesn't work on an audio medium. I literally have a Harry Potter tattoo. Kirk, you know this.
Yeah, I do. I don't know, but Victoria, are you much of a fan?
Yeah,
or?
I like Harry Potter just fine. I read all the books. I saw all the movies, but only once. And it's fine. I'm not a huge fan though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, hopefully some of our listeners are probably fans or at least familiar with the franchise, either in book or movie form. You may recall in year 1, book 1, Harry is in his very first class with Professor Snape. And Snape kind of wants to put him in his place.
And
so he
so
asks
dumb,
him
but I have
a
different
series
rants
of
about that.
Yeah, he asked him like a series of rapid fire questions like, do you know this? Do you know that? Do you know this? Clearly knowing that Harry won't know the answer. And he's like, well, apparently, he was raised
by
he
was raised by muggles. Why would he know these things? Like everybody.
Right.
Ugh. Anyway.
Well, one of the questions he asked them is, where would you find a Bezoar? And Harry, of course, has no idea. And later, in the book The Half-Blood Prince, Harry sees written in his potions book. Well, he does use one. He sees written in his potions book. There's like a list of different antidotes to different poisons, and someone has scrawled in the book, "Just shove a Bezoar down their throats."
Yeah,
which is information he later uses, by the way, to save someone's life. Now, spoiler alert. That's a huge clue who the Half-Blood Prince is,
right?
But that's not the point of this podcast.
Spoiler.
No spoilers. Okay.
Okay.
So, at the suggestion of one of our listeners, thank you, Eric, today I'm talking about Bezoars.
They're a real thing?
That's a real thing. Indeed.
Okay.
Indeed. Now,
I am very intrigued. Go on.
I bet you are. I knew you would be. In the Harry Potter universe?
Universe.
We're going with it, sure. A Bezoar is a stone from the stomach of a goat. Now, you might be tempted to think that means a goat swallowed a stone.
No.
And indeed, animals do sometimes swallow rocks, even on purpose. Birds will store small stones in their gizzards to help crush seeds. I even have in my personal collection 2 gastroliths, which are stones from the stomach of a dinosaur, because, of course I do.
Yeah, why
would
a
Bezoar, don't we all? I mean, a Bezoar is a very real thing, and it's usually not a stone at all, even though it may look like one.
Is it like a gallbladder type thing? I'll let you get into it.
Like a gallstone?
Yeah.
Kind of.
That's kind of what I was thinking too.
Yeah, and there's even sometimes I think gallstones have been lumped in with Bezoars, although technically they're kind of a separate thing.
In any
the word
case,
Bezoar actually comes
really gross. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but it makes it really gross as a antidote to poisons. Shove this thing
eat this.
that is in somebody that was in a goat's belly.
I would have to agree. The word Bezoar actually comes to us from Persian, albeit mangled up along the way. And the word literally means antidote. So
Well,
the use in Harry Potter is historically accurate. They were actually thought to be antidotes. They were traditionally been used in magic and something I refuse to call medicine. So let's just call it folk healing beliefs. The idea really was that swallowing one could cure any poisoning, which was a pretty wild idea. Now, I don't know how commonly, A, people had them around in their house, and B, how commonly people were poisoned. So it probably wasn't something people tested out a whole lot. It was just sort of like, oh, everyone knows you use a Bezoar for poisoning.
Do they happen to be made of activated charcoal?
Yeah, that would be helpful if they were.
Well, also you got to think about the at least 17 and I think 1800s, especially in like Western Europe. Poisoning was a really popular way to get rid of people you didn't like.
Sure. Well, this was even like way before that too. We're talking like 1500s and possibly quite further back than that. Given that these words, the word is even a loan word from Persia, and it probably took some time for that word to get into other languages and whatnot. So. I don't know the exact year where it's thought that this idea first came about, but it's been around for a long time. And it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to goats, although that's sort of, I think, especially in Harry Potter and some other traditions, it's like people talk about goats. But they can be found in the stomach of pretty much any kind of animal, including humans.
Oh.
I am now looking at my stomach. I'm concerned.
Would I know if I had one?
Maybe. You would know if you had a big one. You could actually have like a small one, and you would have no idea. As they get larger, you would definitely know. I think if you go back, people were probably who were butchering animals, hopefully not humans, but butchering animals, found these indigestible stones in their stomachs, and were probably quite amazed, like what is this? How'd this get here? So maybe it was little wonder that people thought that they were magical or had some kind of magical properties. That certainly isn't true, by the way. There is at least one story out there of Bezoars being put to the test, what I think is kind of interesting. In 1565, the famous surgeon Ambrose Paré was working in the court of King Charles IV. And one of the king's cooks was caught stealing silver cutlery. And that's a big no-no, steal from the king. So he was sentenced to death. And the usual method was hanging, but Paré suggested an alternative. So the cook could choose either hanging, or he could agree to be poisoned and then given a Bezoar to swallow. And if he survived, he could go free. So, if you're going to die
what does he have to lose?
Right? So naturally, he took the chance.
Yeah.
And guess what?
He died.
It didn't work. No, it didn't work. Yeah. The cook lived for 7 agonizing, painful hours as the poison worked on him, and he died. So Paré concluded that Bezoars can't, in point of fact, cure all poisons. So interestingly, like I said, you could have one right now. If you did have a bigger one, though, it's going to cause some problems. So we're talking like discomfort, pain, bleeding, etc. They can literally start to block up your GI tract. They can be not just in the stomach, but anywhere throughout the GI tract. And when I dug into this topic, because I wanted to learn more about it, I discovered that there's actually 5 main types of Bezoars that humans can get, and some are the same as what animals get, but certainly some are kind of uniquely human, and that will become obvious. Here's the list, and I'll do my best on pronunciation for these. First up, we have lactobezoars. Can you guess what they're made out of?
Lactic acid, or
basically milk.
Lactose.
Yeah,
that's
like
what I
milk
said. Milk.
Protein. This can occur especially if you give formula to premature babies. They have some digestion problems, and it'll basically dehydrate, and you'll get this massive, essentially, I guess, lactose. Lactose would be the sugar. I don't know. What is that? Milk
stuff.
Proteins.
Yeah. And so that's real bad for premature babies, but not something you probably need to worry about as an adult. Second, we have pharmacobezoars.
Drugs.
Yeah, basically, it's seen in people who've overdosed on, especially on time release medications.
Okay.
There's something about that much time release medicine. It basically just gets balled up into a solid indigestible mass in your stomach. Part of the idea behind a time release medication is that it's hard to digest.
Yeah.
So it takes some time, so it slowly releases. And if you get like handfuls at once,
they have like
bad.
a coating on them that is hard to break down in the stomach, I think.
Yeah.
So
that's,
I guess could ball up. Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, do either of you have a cat? I know, Rachel, you have a cat.
I used to when I was a kid.
I don't have a cat. But
is it a hairball?
You don't?
I don't, but I used to have my old roommate had 2 cats.
Your old roommate had a cat. There you
my partner has a cat.
Okay.
I gotcha.
So you spend time with cats?
A lot, yeah.
You ever seen a cat get a hairball?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's basically a trichobezoar. And they're basically hairballs like cats get. Humans can get these too, which might seem surprising because we don't usually like groom ourselves by, licking hair that's coming off and whatnot. But there is actually, unfortunately, a compulsive hair eating disorder where people pull out their own hair and then feel compelled to eat it.
Gross.
And this can eventually fill up their stomachs. And when it gets really large, it can actually grow a tail of hair that extends into the intestines. And when this happens, it's called Rapunzel syndrome.
Oh.
Which is, a clever name, but that's a really tough situation for someone to be in. Now, the next up we have phytobezoars, and these are probably the type that were historically thought to cure poison. They're an indigestible mass of plant material in the stomach. It could be like seeds, fiber, etc. And they get packed into an indigestible ball that just gets so big that it can't leave the stomach.
Okay.
If you're eating some really woody kind of
I guess. And this is mostly happening to people who have some sort of digestive problem.
Okay.
Because usually we can break all this stuff down. But, with those ones, it's where maybe somebody is really old, their digestion's not really working quite right. And then this can happen because they're not digesting their food, basically.
Yeah. Or if they have any sort of GI issues on their own.
Exactly. The last one I want to talk about is especially interesting. It's called, I'm going to really try here, a Diospyrobezoar. Which is a Diospyrobezoar.
2.
This is specifically, you're not going to get it from the name.
No, okay.
This is specifically a bezoar. This is very specific. That is caused by eating unripened persimmon fruit.
That is
extremely specific.
That is very specific. Persimmon specific.
Persimmon. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nice. So apparently, unripe persimmons contain a soluble tannin called, I believe it's shibuol, SHIBUOL. Your guess is as good as mine. Now, weirdly, it polymerizes into a hard compound in the acid environment of the stomach.
Wow.
And basically forms a bezoar. So if you're eating tons of these, I think these persimmons, it can cause that problem. I have to warn people though, I did see at least one source saying you can also get a Diospyrobezoar from eating pineapple.
Oh,
but as we discussed on the podcast a few times,
we're safe.
We're totally safe because none of us can stand the taste of pineapple. So don't worry, dear listeners. Yeah, your dear hosts are quite safe from that one. Oh, yuck. Ugh. Now, data shows that nearly all Diospyrobezoars have to be removed surgically. But a weird experiment is changing that because researchers found that giving people Coca-Cola can actually break up the bezoars.
I love it.
That's so fun.
It wasn't even that much. It was like, a 20 ounce, like a 20 ounce a day would probably do it. And this is just basic chemistry. Unlike stomach acid, apparently the carbonic acid soda can actually break these down.
Okay.
And it only works completely alone about 23% of the time. People can just drink pop and be like, hey, I'm good. Or as some people call it, soda. Sorry, we're from Minnesota. It's called pop.
I call it soda. I'm not from Minnesota.
Oh, sorry.
I go back and forth actually because I grew up in a household. My mom was from Ohio / Massachusetts. Grandpa's from Colorado. Dad was from Wisconsin. We're lucky I'm not calling it bubbly.
Okay, but nobody calls the drinking fountain the bubbler, right?
No.
Okay, good. We're safe. All right. So back to the topic here. So it's only 23% of the time. So some people do still need some kind of intervention that if it doesn't totally work. But drinking a bunch of soda has got to be like one of the most pleasant medical treatments out there, I got to say.
Great.
And it didn't have to be Coke. They use Coke. I think it's just any kind of carbonated beverage would work.
Mm-hmm.
So Bezoars,
Right.
they really are a real thing. It's not just something from Harry Potter. They are weird. They are real. But let me stress this. Even if by some bizarre chance you happen to have one in your medicine chest, well, okay, first off, time to update your medicine chest. But secondly, don't try to use them to cure poisoning. Call the National Poison Hotline, 1-800-222-1222, a phone number every parent should have memorized. And let's stick to that for poison.
Yeah, it seems like a good plan.
Yeah. Good advice.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kirk.
My sources this week were this is a big one, the Ambrose Paré International Military Surgery Forum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which goes by an acronym, the APIMSF. It rolls off the tongue.
Yep.
WebMD, Encyclopedia Britannica, and Wikipedia. We're going to go to a break, and when we come back, it'll be Rachel.
Yay. Welcome back, everyone. So the season is truly upon us. Harvest season.
Yes, it
With-
is.
Uh-huh.
With that, I
We're getting
have
there,
some
I've been
harvesting
harvesting
things
tomatoes.
It depends what you're harvesting.
It
But
truly
yeah,
does.
Yeah, it has begun.
Yes. With that, I've decided on a topic that is incredibly pedantic, but still has like some really outrageous things to just blow your
Okay.
mind. So
Okay, I'm
we'll
ready.
start with this. What do you think of when you think of a berry?
A berry?
A berry.
Oh,
List some berries.
jeez.
Blueberries.
This is such a trick
raspberries,
question.
Mm-hmm.
Strawberries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
Blackberries.
you can tell us none of these things are berries.
Loganberries.
Yeah. Kirk, you kind of
Juneberries.
got on that. Yeah. So like Victoria, you were saying strawberries, gooseberries, raspberries, blueberries, blackberries. Those are generally things that people think of.
And
Mulberries.
they're not berries.
Not berries.
They are not, except for blueberries. They are
Blueberries
the
a
only
berry.
berries, botanically speaking.
Strawberry is definitely not a berry.
No.
No. So I am, of course, talking about the botanical definition of a berry. I'm not talking about the culinary definition of a berry, in which
Right.
it is a small, fleshy, most of the time edible fruit. That is the botanical definition of or the culinary definition of a berry.
Right. Now, I'm a huge pedant.
Yeah.
I love pedantry. But when people bring up the whole, that's not, technically a berry.
Congrats.
Well,
I'm
children
there.
might be listening, so I'm not going to say what I want to say to them about that. It's like, get over it.
That's why I'm just going about botanic. And usually I don't really care, but I thought that was kind of strange, and there are some things that are kind of strange about it. So let's
Yeah,
talk
it's
about
cool that, like,
what
botanically, a strawberry is not a berry.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you also going to tell us about poems and droops?
Not too much.
Okay.
So what qualifies as a berry in botany is different. In botany, a berry is a fleshy fruit without a stone or a pit, which would be a drupe, which are things like peaches and mangoes and things like that. Those are drupes.
Cherries, plums.
And cherries and
nectarines.
plums.
Yeah.
Those are all drupes.
What about like a
technically.
gooseberry?
I'll
How
get
many
into it.
seeds does it? Well,
So a berry also comes from one flower that has one ovary. Okay.
okay.
Right.
That
So
is
not
what
a fig.
yes. So which means overall that things that are botanically speaking berries are things like blueberries, kiwis, red currants, tomatoes, grapes, eggplants, cucumbers, bananas, and peppers are all
Okay.
berries. Because they come from one
Yeah.
flower
Right.
and
Yeah.
that has one ovary.
Okay,
Meanwhile,
but
go
aren't
ahead.
gooseberries like closely related to red currants? So are they berries?
Yeah. So I think a gooseberry would be.
I think a gooseberry
berry, yeah?
could be an actual
Is a berry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is.
However, things like raspberries and blackberries,
No.
Right. No way.
are not berries. They are actually called aggregate fruits, which means that the flower had several ovaries inside of it that got pollinated and such, and they grew from that one flower. And as they were growing, it had multiple seeds, but because it's multiple ovaries but in one flower, they are not a berry.
That's what each of those little bubbles is.
Yes.
Right. Right.
Each little bubble is a little tiny fruit from one single ovary within that one flower, which is kind of crazy. Mulberries, which look very similar, they are actually several fruits that merge together as they were growing from multiple flowers. So not just from like multiple ovaries, but from multiple flowers. They are so close together that when they start to like grow fruit, it actually like merge together and become clusters of seedy deliciousness.
Because if you look at a mulberry flower, it does have lots of little flowers all together.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. The other berry that we tend to think of that you listed was strawberries. Strawberries themselves are not, they're not technically, they're not a berry, and they're kind of complicated fruit. So there's something called an accessory fruit.
Weird.
They're so weird. They're called an accessory fruit. And the true fruit of the strawberry, because the red part that we like to eat is not the fruit.
Right.
It's just a fleshy extra.
Pretty much. The little seeds that are all over that, those are the fruits.
Those are the fruits, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it didn't grow from...
It didn't grow from...
It didn't grow from an ovary.
No. It grew from an extra part somewhere else, out of not of the flower itself, but it kind of was like a swelling around the ovaries and such, and just... I mean, it's a method that works for them, but it's
wild,
not.
yeah.
It is not a berry.
Two pedants, yes.
Yes. So I...
Like Rachel.
I just wanted to be a little picky about this. There's been a lot of berries around where I am, which is wonderful, and I'm talking about culinary speaking berries, not actual berries. And I was thinking about it. I was like, I want to talk about this. So that's my topic for today. Berries that aren't berries and berries that are berries.
Yeah. Go correct all your friends. They'll love you for it.
Now, because it came up already in the podcast, I think we need to address this. You did talk about this in the past already. I did a whole episode on it, but where does the pineapple fall?
Ooh, that is a good question.
Was it an aggregate fruit? I forget.
I think it.
I wanted to say it was, but I'm terrified because I know pineapples are so weird
and taste horrible.
Terrified is a pretty strong word I just threw out there. I'm not terrified of the answer.
Yeah. I didn't see it on the list, but I also wasn't looking into aggregate fruits. I think technically speaking, each individual, like, from what I remember, is each individual like cube is from a flower. So I'm pretty sure that they are an aggregate fruit, but I didn't look into it.
I just checked, and yes, pineapple is
multiple
indeed
fruit.
an aggregate fruit.
Aha!
That we have no reason to ever eat.
Exactly.
Perfect.
So that means that they are related to things like raspberries and blackberries, which is horrifying.
You know, we're really blowing it here. We're never going to get sponsored by Big Pineapple at this rate.
No. It's okay. We can go without Dole money.
Fair enough. They haven't reached out to us anyway, so I think we're not really.
We're not throwing anything away.
Yeah, we're not really throwing anything away there. So.
Anyway.
But a big strawberry, give us a call. Let's talk.
Ooh. Anyway, that's what I had for my topic this week. My sources are my old botany notes from college and a good refresher on Wikipedia, actually. So thanks.
I'm amazed you still have I've still got some old botany notes and whatnot, so I don't blame you.
Yeah.
And I was in school a lot longer ago than you were, so.
So thanks everyone for listening this week. We will see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's show. Be sure to subscribe. New episodes drop every Wednesday, and we love sharing this strange world with all of our listeners. If you would be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review, that would be great. It lets other lovers of the strange discover the show. You can reach out to us on social media by searching for Strange by Nature Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can send us an email as well. Our address is contact@strangebynaturepodcast.com. If you want more information about the show, you can also check out our website, which is strangebynaturepodcast.com. Until next week, get outside, stay curious, and embrace the strange.